Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CDH. I am one of your hosts, Reed, aka Sick Robot, and today I am joined by my co-host Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going, everyone?
And special guest Claire from Who Brewed This.
Hi.
So in this episode, we're going to be doing a very belated coverage of all of our experiences at Okotoberfest and potentially some other discussions, but we'll see how all that pans out. But before we get into any of that, Claire, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, yeah. My name's Claire. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of the CDH content creation and kind of stream team Who Brewed This. With Scoots and Pedro Cicada. And yeah, we stream on Twitch, typically Thursdays, at around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I play a lot of CDH. I played in the MLC this year. Did okay. I'm working on, leveling up a little bit, but so I wouldn't say I'm like the greatest or anything, but I feel like I'm capable enough, so
yeah, and you'll be prepped for next year.
Exactly. We're definitely working on increasing those win percentages for sure.
Awesome. So again, before we get into the main topic, we're just gonna get through some housekeeping and new developments first off. So first off, for housekeeping, we have our new patrons for this episode, who are Thomas O.
And Harley M.
Thanks for being patrons. You guys make the show run and give us the ability to do our gameplay episodes that are still ongoing, and hopefully we should be getting another one out at some point in the future. But thanks, much appreciated. In terms of new developments, we have a couple of things that we're going to be on in the next month or so. One of which is the Oops All Salt charity stream, which I should have pulled up on literally anything before I got into this section of the podcast.
It's December 17th and 18th
okay.
On Twitch, on Oops All Salt's Twitch TV channel. They're raising money to fight cancer, and so if you're interested in, watching, they've got like just a whole mess of CDH content creators.
Oh yeah, they've got like the actual like massive stream team.
They got Playing with Power, they got Play to Win, and us, we're just like them, right? Sad Naz, Elder Drunken Highlander. It's gonna be a grand old time.
It's gonna be a great time. So definitely make sure to just come out, tune into the stream, hang out for a bit, maybe donate to charity a bit, all that stuff. Obviously, no requirement to, but we would appreciate it, and I'm sure the Oops All Salt guys would appreciate it as well, guys and gals, non-binary pals. In terms of the other new development that we have, there is going to be another Path of Dominance, which is the r/CDH servers CDH tournament series that they've been running for one event so far, but they are now going to be running Path of Dominance 2 on, again, December the 17th. So make sure to go check that out if you have that day free. Maybe go play in it to show some support. And if you are, then me and Morgan are actually going to be casting for that event. I think we have the early block, so rounds like 1 to 3 or something like that, later in the day. So if you're not playing the event, or if you finish your round early, make sure to tune into the broadcast, hang out, say hi, and yeah, we'll be just hanging out doing comms. I'm super excited for that, because again, I don't think either of us get to do comms as much as we like to, and it's a good time.
Comms is it's a lot of fun, but obviously it's always hard, because you also want to participate in tournaments, so
yeah,
it's good to have the opportunity to do both.
Cool. So aside from all that, we can get into our main topic, which is Oktoberfest. Very, very belated, but that's fine, because we definitely have other podcast episodes that we have in the backlog, and definitely haven't completely run out of ideas, so Yeah. I think we're gonna start from sort of like just the start of the event, as I think is probably usual for our event recaps at this point, and sort of just like go through, talk about some stuff that happened during the event, talk about some highlights, talk about our decks, etc., and just whatever comes. Um, so in terms of travel in, Claire, I know that you said that you are very lucky in where you're located because flights to Philadelphia are what, like an hour?
Yeah, hour and 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, so not bad.
No, not at all.
Definitely not the 11-hour drive that we did last time to get to Philly.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, I thought about
For
doing
Punt
that
City.
For Punt City.
Yeah.
And then my ride couldn't make it. So I was like, okay, I'll just take a flight, and it was very, very smooth, and I got to hang out in Philly for a little bit prior to the event, which was nice.
Yeah, which is honestly like it's such an underrated part of like flying places. Even if it's like only like a 5-hour drive away, it's like, oh yeah, I just like get to sort of hang out, and especially if I'm like less than a half hour from the turn or from the airport rather, then you're just like, cool, yeah, we'll hang out. We'll get up at like a reasonable hour on the Monday to have a flight back or whatever. In terms of our travel to the event, as said before, yeah, so we did the 10-hour drive for Punt City in Philadelphia like a few months ago, and Morgan made the executive decision to swear off all driving past like 5-hour road trips, which I think we fully agree with. There's no complaints here, so we're basically always going to be flying down to Philly if we ever do it in the future, as we did this time. It was nice. It was very smooth.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, compared to some of the other places we've traveled, it being close helps
Yeah.
enormously, admittedly. But
I think like I'd probably even place it as being like a better travel experience on the whole than either the drives to like Niagara or the drives to Montreal for GPs.
Yeah,
Or
for
MFs
sure.
as they're called, I guess. God, I hate that. I'm not gonna get stuck on that, but I hate they're not called GPs anymore. Well, I guess there are GPs at Magic Fest now, but you can't say GP Toronto. Anyway. Yeah,
You'll have
so
to
I
excuse
think
Reed. He hates change.
just yep. I want everything to be the exact way that it was when Magic was created in '97 and never progressed past there. Which is why I play Broomer Gracias Timid decks and not whatever the new spice that people are playing is. Anyway.
Blue Farm.
Yeah, so I figured we'd probably go through like a couple of highlights of tournament play. Morgan, you already published a tournament report, which people can go check out for like a more in-depth version of what you experienced at the tournament. Claire, have you published any recaps or anything so far?
I had a couple tweets about some games that I had, but I had not like the whole tournament reports. Some of my games were kind of rough, to be honest.
Yeah, there was a lot of I would call the tournament weekend for Okotoberfest pretty emotionally taxing on the whole. Not necessarily because of the event itself or the format or anything, but it just seems like a lot of people had like pretty emotional experiences in terms of like how a lot of the rounds went, and just yeah, just like playing in general. I mean, it felt like, I don't know, maybe it was the event, but it wasn't really how the event was run. It just like felt very important, right? Like it felt like a very big thing.
Well, and I got very close to making the cut. I was 44th in the Swiss. Yeah. And that was rough. I was really like fingers crossed there right before finals, like, oh, do I make top 40? And it was a little crushing to hit 44th, but it was definitely better than my Punt City performance, and I'm hoping to keep improving.
Yeah, I mean,
Reed definitely has some stories about just missing the cut.
Like actual unreal stories. I'm not gonna get too far into it, but like, yeah, I 100% feel where you're at, and also like the cut at Oktoberfest actually ended up being pretty brutal because there was just like a sea of 11 points, sort of like clumped at the bottom of the cut because there was a cut to top 40, so like top 8 got buys to semis, and then the next 32 all had to play quarters to make it into semis. So like the cut stretched down pretty far past like what you would normally see at a CDH tournament for like cut to top 16, or cut to like top 13 or whatever. So there was just like it was basically a cut like right in like the top third of a pack of people with like all the same points, and it was almost entirely decided on breakers, whether you got in or not. So there were a bunch of heartbreakers in that cut, I think. Thankfully I made it into top 40 at 39th because we ID'd at table 10 for the last
Never
round.
didn't have it. always we knew we were gonna make it, wasn't even worried about it.
So like very very realistically, like I think like 2 of the people who ID'd in our pod didn't make it into the top cut either, so like I very reasonably could have like missed top cut off of that.
That's gotta be crushing. Like,
yeah,
it was, I'm sure I've got it, and then oh god.
Yeah, it was like I had a feeling like, so when we were at that table, I'll actually go over this because I think like it's probably one of the most noteworthy experiences. Oh no, actually, okay, I'll there's one other game that I sort of want to note on, but yeah, that last pod, we all sat down and one of the guys was like, yeah, so like sorry, this isn't like mocking said person or whatever, but just to give a frame of sort of like what happened when we all sat down, is like, yeah, so I'm like actually like a math teacher slash, was he like a math prof or something? Anyway, he was like, yeah, so I have like a pretty good idea of like the math required to like make all these like what happens during this cut. Everybody at the tables above us are actually playing out their games except for like the top table, which doesn't matter to us anyway because they're all making the cut no matter what. So if we draw and everybody else above us is playing, that means we all have like a very very good shot at making top 40 because like they're gonna leave people behind and we're all at 10 points and the cut's gonna be at 11. So we should all probably draw. And like the entire time we're talking about that, like obviously like we asked a judge about stuff because people always have to ask about IDs at CDH events especially. And then so the judge is just like standing behind us being like, okay, like you can continue talking about this because we've been talking about this for like 10 minutes since the start of the round. Is like, okay, you can keep talking about this, but you actually have to like resolve mulligans and take game actions and stuff while you're talking about this in order to like, you know, not all get slow play warnings. So we're like, oh, all right. And the entire time I'm just like, I like really don't want to take this draw because there's a very real chance that I miss the cut, but also like I think I have the like second best breakers in this pod and like pretty good breakers among the sea of other people that like could potentially get in. So I'm like, at the very end, I'm like, yeah, all right, we'll take the draw, and it barely worked out.
So yeah, we had kind of an interesting experience because I was near the top of the pack because I was 3-2-1, and I think there was one person who was 4-2, and we were like discussing the ID, and because everyone else in the pod was on like similar. I think there was someone who was like 3-1-2, or you know things like that. Like everyone had at least like 15 points.
Enough, yeah.
Sorry, the structure was 5 for a win, 1 for a draw, 0 for a loss. So everyone in the pod had 15 points. We're talking about the ID, like that'll, you know, we're locked in anyways. And then basically, originally it was like I didn't really want to take it, and then I was like, you know what, I'm fine to take it if like that's what the pod wants to do. And then they come over, they're like, oh yeah, you guys are the feature match, and we're like, oh well, we're probably IDing. But like we can just play an exhibition match, and they were like, no, if you're the feature match, it has to be for real.
So basically being pressured into it on the
so
spot.
We were like, well, I guess we'll play, and I wound up doing some absolutely very disgustingly not okay Yisan things on stream, so that was satisfying.
Yeah, there were a couple. Actually, yeah, I did have like a really this is another. I guess I'll just talk about just some more of the rounds because there was like some pretty interesting ones. Yeah, I did some like pretty disgusting things to the first table that I played, which was like, I think at Punt City I had the most dominant game of Tim the Thrasios I've ever played. But This time I had probably the most Thrasios abusive game of CDH I've ever played in the first round of Oktoberfest, where I think I had turn 3 Thrasios, Soul Ring, Barmancer's Familiar, Cradle, Seedborn Muse all going. And
Oh
it
my
was just
God.
like, yeah, just like unreal amounts of like, just nobody had removal either. So it was just like, cool, I'll pass. All right, cool. End of your turn. On turn 3, draw 3 cards. Next person's turn. Draw another 3 cards. Next person's turn. Oh, cool. Untap. Great, you're all dead. It was just like this. It felt incredibly disgusting because the hand that I kept didn't even have black mana in it either, or the Seedborn Muse. And then I ended up just like drawing like land drop Seedborn Muse off the top for like the colors plus the Seedborn Muse that I needed. And I was just like, this is not okay.
You see, that kind of feels counter to my experience. Like, I played Winota,
Yeah.
and that room was definitely ready to take down commander-centric strategies, or at least it felt like
very.
it.
Yeah, very.
Because like the words "before combat" are have given me some amount of trauma for sure.
Yep.
Because I definitely had like good hands, explosive hands that definitely just like ate like Swords of Plowshares, other removal spells, bounce spells. It was rough. So I definitely had some good games though. The one that I really kind of had a good time with was oh gosh, I believe it was, they did 2 rounds the next day, so this would have been round 3. I'm 0-1-1 right now. I started with a draw, then lost my round 2 game. I go into round 3, and it was like Jetmir in first position.
Just
A
great to see as a Winota player, by
yeah,
the way.
Malcolm Timna in second position, Urza Polykraken in third position, and then me. And I end up with a hand that, like, I turn 1 Winota. I believe there was a Phyrexian Crawler as well. And so I play those out, and then before it comes back around to me, the Urza player drops a Grafdigger's Cage. So
Yeah.
I spend most of the game under this Grafdigger's Cage, and the Jetmir player keeps dropping these layered stacks effects to prevent me from being able to remove the Grafdigger's Cage. I've got a Skyclave Apparition in my hand, but like a Hushwing Griff comes down, then a Serolf comes down,
yeah,
and it's just like, wow, there's a lot of things preventing me from doing this, and I'm hyper focused on what the Jetmir player is doing so that I can remove the Grafdigger's Cage. Jetmir removes the Malcolm Timlin player, then goes to remove the Urza player. At this point, unfortunately, I'm a little salty, and I'm like, I just kind of want to go, like, I have a lot of friends there. I'm like, okay, I think I've lost this.
Yeah, I just want to like go play games or hang out with people that I like actually want to hang out with.
So I was like, you need to, I'm telling this guy how to win, essentially. I'm like, you need to attack me, because if you don't kill me before that Grafdigger's Cage goes, you haven't done anything to my board. So I can attack. I've got like 3. Yeah, I've got like 3 Winota triggers on board at this point. And the guy almost calls me for slow play, and I'm like, all right, fine. I'm a little
great. Make your play.
Yeah, that's fine. So I shut up. And I'm just, I'm a little salty, but the Urza player's like, no, play it out. Play this out, because this guy is not listening to you at all. He's gonna kill me, and then you're gonna be. And so what happens is he kills the Urza player, and I'm like, all right, that's fine. Go to combat. Winota triggers. I land a Rick prior to kind of dissuade.
Yeah, of course.
It's not an online. The Anthem isn't online yet. I've got 3 humans. I've got like an Esper Sentinel, Winota, and Rick in play, and then I believe it was Eidolon of Rhetoric, a Hope of Durapur, and the Phyrexian Crawler. My board hadn't really been interacted with. He wasn't swinging at me. So I go to combat. I swing 3 Winota triggers. First one is Blade Historian.
Yep.
Then it's like Mog Catcher Thalia. And at this point, the Anthem's online. none of the Jetmir players things have more than 4 toughness. I have double strike, so I gained something like 30 life at that point. And I can tell that this guy is just immensely tilted, because he thought he had it locked, and it was just like, he didn't listen to me. So
you gave him the answer, like verbally, like okay, you need to kill me. It's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm gonna attack this person. Immediately dies.
Yeah, and I don't mean to like rag on the guy. Like, tournaments are high pressure situations. I think he may have thought I was like 4D chessing him or something along those lines, which I can totally understand. You don't want to listen to people like in Comp REL events, or you want to try and at least understand if they're like trying to get one over on you. But the way it ended up was quite a cool win. I did end rounds 2, 3, and 1. I ended up winning my round 6. I just kind of walked into it, to be honest. It was just like, turn 1 Winota and a creature, swing, get Mog, or get Zealous Conscripts in play, and then swing again, get Mog Catcher in play, and then go to my turn 4, activate, get Kiki Jiki, win the game.
Where do you need?
Yeah, the only interaction was a Karkashima pilot, and they had only Naked Kark in play, so they like go to Brainstorm to look for interaction. It goes back to their hand. There's a Thalia in play that I put down, so like that's the only thing that they can do, and at that point I just had it.
Yeah, Thalia versus Naked Kark is like potentially the most frustrating position to be in as a Karkashima pilot, because it's like, I can technically do things, but like a large percentage of the time I can be paying 4 mana to try to cast this Brainstorm twice and then dying because I can't do anything.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it at that point I was like, okay, maybe I can make the cut, but no, it didn't end up doing it. But I'll take 44th. It doesn't feel terrible. Like, out of 150 players, 44th isn't too bad, so.
Yeah, it's a very, very respectable finish.
You put yourself in a place where if the breakers had just gone your way, you would have made top cut, right? Which is like about as much as you can ask for, I feel like, in a lot of CDH environments where like I think the end goal probably for like the realistic end goal for like being really, really, really proficient at the format is to try to like consistently just make the top cut at any given tournament. And I basically count like, I mean, obviously like it doesn't have the same gravitas, but it's, for me, it's effectively the same if you like have the same record and just like unfortunately lose out on breakers because of who you played against or just because of the tournament format. It's just like, okay, well, that sucks. Didn't make it in, but like I did well enough where I could have on any other day.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm definitely not like disappointed with it, but just looking to play some more tournaments now to try and increase that. So increase the amount of tournaments played.
It's such a good time to get into playing tournament CDH too. I mean, like there's the like just having the entire Eminence circuit going on next year, plus like a bunch of the IRL tournaments this year. Monarch, I think is still running events. There was talk of them taking a break, but we'll see.
I don't know what Joking's doing. I hope he sticks with it, though.
What Joking is doing is just killing himself through overwork, so
yeah.
Nick, if you're listening to this, go take a break. I know you probably already are, but like, holy moly.
Much love, though. He put on a wonderful event, for sure.
Oh, it was a great event. It was actually, I think, unfortunately enough, the quality of events coming from Monarch at this point seems to be inversely related with how much I see Nick and Libby during the weekend and interact with them, because it seems like this one like went off basically without a hitch. I think it like ran very, very smoothly, and yet I did not talk to Nick and Libby at all because it seems like they were just like continuously working behind the scenes to get everything to run smoothly, so big ups to them.
Absolutely, they definitely deserve it. All the Monarch crew does, for sure.
Oh yeah. I guess we can talk Morgan if we want to talk top cut for a second, just to get.
Well, I guess first I have to share my my funny round story.
Yes, please do.
Which was so people were being real slow after time was called, which happens at a lot of events, unfortunately. It's something I think most TOs are acknowledging we need to come up with a solution to. But they wound up pushing around a day because otherwise they would have been starting whatever it was around 6 at like 8:30.
Yeah, it was late,
and that's
like
with no dinner break.
Yeah.
And so anyways, it's round 5. We are I'm playing against 2 like Timna Crom decks, but teched to be grindy. And then
which there were
Kima,
a couple of those at the tournament that weekend. Like there were like a bunch of like no Nas Timna Crom things that were like sort of breachy, but anyway, yeah.
For sure.
Isn't that what Rebel was playing? Something similar?
That's what Rebel's playing.
Rebel,
I think one of them did have Nas, but he was one of the 2 Timna Crom players did have Nas, one of them didn't, but even the one with the Nas was still like relatively heavy on he had a couple of like the hate, like there's sort of that set of like 3 or 4 hate bears where it's like, do we play Dothy? Do we play Lavinia? And he was like, yeah, I play those. But anyways, I got stuck on lands relatively early, and just had Thrasios and a training grounds that I was activating like once a turn. As there were, my second land got op agented. And then a second op agent came down, and I had, I think, 5 tutors in my hand at one point.
Nice.
So I'm just, like, not really doing much.
Yep.
I eventually got up to, I found a Dockside, and I found a Psych Rift. And I managed to overload the Psych Rift with a Windfall on the stack. Unfortunately, one of the op agents immediately came back down. Like, it was just flashed in response.
That's how that turns out a lot of the time. You're just like, I hope the Psych Rift will remove my problems, and then it doesn't.
And then I drew, I think, exactly a Dispel, and had to live through 2 different players untapping with 12 cards in hand. From the Rift Windfall. Kazurna Kima untaps, he goes, cool, I'll play this Yogg Will. Out of my graveyard, I'll replay, like, my Mana Crypt, a Dork, my Mystic Remora, and my Op Agent. I'm like, guys, please. Just, can I search my library once? Just once? And then, Timna Crom lays out some hate. He Pithing Needles my Thrasios, which was extremely rude.
So rude every time it happens.
Yeah. It goes to my turn. I, like, play out some stuff. I still don't have a lot of, like, persistent mana. I like, replay my Dockside, so I have some treasures. I pass. Timna Crom flashes in a Notion Thief in my end step. And then he untaps, he, like, casts Underworld Breach, and time in the round is called. So we're, like, discussing, what do we do about this? Do we have interaction? Eventually it's like, no, we don't really have interaction. So I go, well, I guess I can solve this. I'll cast my Mystical Tutor into an Op Agent. You can find my, like, whatever it was, Swan Song, and you can counter this. So we figure that out. It gets countered. He then goes, cool, I'll cast this Tainted Pact. He starts flipping. He flips, like, he gets really deep before he sees Wheel of Fortune. He counts, he doesn't have 28 cards left in his library, so he can't Notion Wheel us. So he keeps going. He gets down to, like, 4 or 5 cards, and we're like, well, that's kind of spooky. And he flips, Ranger Captain with 2 cards left in his library.
Just unreal.
He casts the Ranger Captain. He has 1 land up. I'm like, oh, okay, well, he can't, I guess he's trying to, like, just use this to not lose. And then I went like, wait, have you played a land this turn? He goes, no. I'm like, all right, well, so now the Timna Crom player casts a tutor into the Op Agent to get Mindbreak Trap to counter the Ranger Captain. And then I go, wait a minute, there's a Mystic Remora trigger on that. You should draw. So he draws, forcing the Timna Crom player to draw with his Notion Thief, 1 card in library. I flash in an Archivist of Ogma, forcing him to draw 0 cards in library. The Ranger Captain gets countered, and he casts the Thoracle, to which the other Tymna Crown player responds with a consult for his own Thoracle, forcing him to draw, losing the game. Kazura Nukima then goes, okay, untap. I'm gonna try and Chain of Vapor your op agent. He goes, I'm going to plunge into darkness for all of my life except 1. And then I'm going to try and chain your op agent, which draws Force of Will pitching the Thrasios. Or sorry, not the Thrasios, the Thassa's Oracle. So now Tymna Crown doesn't have a Thassa's Oracle. And then he goes, well, I guess I'll Abrupt Decay it. And then he's out of mana, but at this point we go, wait a second. The other Tymna Crown player died in turns. He still had a turn coming to him. We talk with the judge. Kazura Nukima gets an extra turn. Like, because he takes the turn. The number of turns is locked in when time is called.
Yeah.
And then it goes to Tymna Crown, who he goes, I'm not winning, but here's what I'll do. I'll Savine's Wreck back my op agent. So there are now 2 op agents again. I'll play a Dranith Magistrate and a Cursed Totem. And I was like,
great result.
Thrasios' Pithing Needle, there's a Dranith, there's a Cursed Totem. I can't search from 2 op agents. Sounds good. He passes the turn to me. People were like making comments like, I guess it's a draw. I go, cool. Use my carpet, make 4 mana, spend all my treasures, tap all my lands, finale for 10, get back this flyer, swing, kill the table.
Amazing.
And this was like 40 minutes into time.
Just the most scuffed win of all time.
It's like, just let me leave. I want to get off Mr. Bones' wild ride.
I love the idea of a finale of Devastation just sitting in a hand for an entire game through 2 op agents and just being like, fuck you, I don't need to search my library, die.
So yeah, that was the end of that day, and then I just went. We like went to a restaurant where everyone had already like gotten their food because they left. They left like 20 minutes after the round ended, and it was like, my round went an extra 20 minutes.
That was the shawarma place, right?
Yeah, it's actually a great place. I was super down with that.
I wanted fat and salt, and it delivered. I was like, sounds good. This was what I wanted.
I wanted like literally any food, and then I realized that they were like still serving tea, and I was just like, that is actually the best idea ever, because it's after like a massively long tournament day, and it's like 9 o'clock, and I would just love a cup of tea, thanks. So I was very down. And then I guess Top Cut, I unfortunately didn't make it out of quarters because of a game where I was in last position against 3 decks that were all on like relatively turbo-ish stuff, as well as I scried a Labman to the bottom off of Thrasios activations 3 times that game.
Oh wow!
with the Thoracle in my hand, it just like I had to keep like shuffling to like fetch lands, and like I think I tutored once or twice. And it just kept showing up on top on Thrasios activations, and I'm just like, I really don't need this, please go away. And then I just hit lands instead, and it was like, great, cool, I guess I'll die. And then we died. And then Morgan, you played semis because of the cut.
Yeah, it was actually, I feel like we should explain, the cut was actually an interesting format.
I explained it earlier in the episode.
Oh, you did? So I went directly to the semis because I was 4th overall. I got into a pod with, just all my friends, which sucks.
The team kill was actually like so real, that pod.
So I opened with like kind of a ridiculous start, which was land, Training Grounds, Crypt, Soul Ring into turn 2 Thrasios double activate. And then, things got a little weird in that Alana, who was on Rogsai, flipped a Grand Abolisher off the top with Ragavan, and then goes, cool, Dockside, I'll cast the Grand Abolisher. Um, which unfortunately forced me
Unreal.
to spend my mind break trap. Um, and then I went to my turn, found my own dockside, and had the mana to play Grand Abolisher, and then play Aven Mind Sensor, Neoform it for Emil, and activate targeting my dockside. Um, but unfortunately, Alana had the Pact of Negation to counter my Grand Abolisher, and then she lost because I destroyed one of her treasures with a Force of Vigor, so she couldn't pay, and her Dark Ritual to try and pay got countered. Uh, my Mind Sensor landed to take Ian's um, Enlightened Tutor, but he had a Sylvan Library that drew him like 6 cards, and then short on turn 4, he just went cool Dockside Emil, and we died. But
Cable
it
died.
was a wacky game.
It was yeah, definitely. I do love that game explicitly for the counterpoint to the anti-Sylvan Library meta discussion.
Yeah,
because
because
that,
Sylvan
that one
Library
100% won in the game.
won in the game, and the game ended on turn 4. Like it
Yep.
was pretty explicitly a good
So
card.
I know Brian Koval won the event on Tim Necrom, but the event definitely felt like green is still good. Like,
Oh, it was a hyper mid-rangey event. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
obviously Timna Krom did like put 2 in the top 4 and like a bunch in the top 16 and top 40 and stuff. But like honestly, I feel like that's less of a testament of TNK's like turbo-ness or speed or whatever, and more just a factor of it still just being a very good mid-range deck with reasonable win conditions. In fact, top tier win conditions, but also just like again being very, very reasonable in mid-range grind games. So yeah, I mean, yeah, tournament felt pretty mid range even compared to like other IRL ones, right? Like I think Punt City was definitely more nausy. Um,
Yeah, Punt City felt super nausy. Like I was on Karkashima in Punt City, and like
yeah,
almost no one removed my creatures. I just got kind of. Krark said no a lot to
just
me that day,
yeah.
but yeah, compared to Punt City, this definitely felt like super mid rangey, super green pods for sure.
Which is actually sort of surprising because apparently like a bunch of people brought Rockside to the tournament too. Which like I don't know. Like I get wanting to get under the mid range decks, but like we went over this on we had a listener question a couple of episodes ago, I think, where it's what do you need to uh like cycle out of the mid range meta and back into turbo meta? Um and like like we came to the conclusion that it's like it's really hard to just like break back to turbo immediately without like a rotation through stacks or like people trying to go over mid range and then like getting under them with turbo. Because like none of the mid range decks have really like cut any of their mid range hedges, or sorry, their turbo hedges. Too many, too many names of like archetypes
Yeah,
and stuff. But
definitely
like
people
people like
people are
haven't
playing
cut
the
mind break
interaction.
traps or anything. Like there people are playing like miscasts, mind break trap, both forces, fierce, like it's just all this free interaction and like a bunch of hate as well. Like I mean, you were on Deafening Silence, right? Like
Yeah,
the mid
yeah.
range decks
Well,
are still
I
hedged
like I
against
was
turbo.
I mean, I was on like Archon, so and Ether
Oh,
Queen,
true.
so
Yeah, yeah.
like
That
I
is
was
true,
playing
actually.
like somewhere halfway between stacks and mid range deck. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of like mid range decks with a collector roof, and they were certainly playing the anti turbo hedge cards. So it seemed a little rough for the turbo decks that didn't have um a good pivot plan.
Yeah. Did you Claire, did you feel like it was more of a like removal differential between Punt City and Oko, or was it like a threat assessment differential, do you think? Like in your
Um,
experience?
that's a good question. I'm inclined to say that it was more of a removal differential.
Mm. Just
Um,
people on more swords to plowshares and etc.
yeah, a lot of a lot of bounce spells too. In
Sure.
fact, I would say those were the majority of the things that I saw, though I definitely did see some kill spells as well. Um, I will say I know I got a lot of hate at Pun City, but I didn't get like removal hate. Being on Karkashima, I got a lot of
Right.
like stack hate
Yeah,
specifically.
just like aggressively countering
Yeah,
things before you're even like necessarily going for it.
exactly.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean I'm not like super surprised, just because like yeah, it feels like people are like teching more toward the more interactive games, but also like it's weird that people are both finding space for like more free counter magic as well as more removal in mid range decks. Or
Well,
potentially that's not like a per deck thing, and more like it might just be like pods just happen to have like a bunch of removal plus a bunch of interaction.
and I mean, the thing about it too is that you can kind of like wait to see what your pod looks like before you use your removal. Like if you're
That is
playing in a
true,
bunch of
actually.
like uh Tymna decks or a bunch of Thrasios decks, like those slide under the radar like so easily still. Like people just don't remove
Yeah,
Tymna,
that's
they
great.
don't remove Thrasios. Yeah, no, I know. And that's why I'm playing Blue Farm right now. Just because the amount of free value you end up getting off of those commanders, I
Yeah.
think way exceeds like these explosive commander centric strategies like Winota and Kark, which I typically like playing, but it's
which
just the
which sorry, it is just
yeah.
funny that we're saying that with the context of Ian just having top four at another tournament on Winona. But
No, I know. Well, I mean, Ian is kind of a freak of nature, to be
yeah,
honest. Like
yeah. Yeah.
one of the best competitive EDH players I have ever had the pleasure of talking to, and absolutely a lovely human being as well.
Who also, yeah, made top four at this tournament that we're currently talking about as well. Just
He was on Dawn
probably,
Waker, though, right? He wasn't
yep,
on.
Yep.
Yeah.
as well as winning a tournament on Tivit, like
Yeah.
just before. So yeah, this might actually, Morgan, is this so? Okay, Claire, sorry. Let me know if I'm interrupting you and like getting
Mm-hmm.
you off track. Please finish what you were saying before I got us onto the Ian
Oh,
appreciation train.
I was pretty much done. It was just it definitely felt like the meta choice going into that event was to pick a value commander, not a commander that serves as like a win condition like Winota or Kark.
Right.
Those felt very like kind of hamstrung in my experience, whereas the decks that had like lots of value engines definitely seemed to be doing much better, like a lot of the Tymna decks, a lot of the Thrasios decks. That was just my experience personally. I know a lot of people like did well on Rogsai. And I don't really consider that a deck that uses its commander to get a lot of consistent value. You get your value once off of your ROG, and then you kind of either win or you don't.
Yeah, it's sort of to speed up your win attempts rather
Yeah.
than like producing value at all. I was gonna ask though, like Morgan, do you think Ian's current run outweighs your 2021 run? Wait, was it last year? It was last year, right? Or was it
Was
2020?
I don't know. Ian's a great player, and I really enjoy his company, and I don't necessarily want to, you know, get into
Get into that on the pod. Okay, you know
into
what? We'll get Ian.
into the dick measuring competition.
We'll get Ian
If it
on
can be
next
avoided.
podcast, and then I'll ask that question again with him present, so he can
Yeah,
defend
we'll have
himself.
a big old Donnybrook and really hash it out.
Cool. So I like, yeah, it's sort of like as a segue out of like talking about like general like meta. I did actually sort of want to do like at least like a quick review on what each of us came away with in terms of thoughts about the decks that we played at the event. Claire, if you would like to, because I know you're sort of we've been sticking on Winota for a bit, so it might be worth it to sort of finish off the thought about how you thought it performed during the weekend. Aside from like obviously there was a lot of there was high Winota aggro, I'd say,
Yeah, for sure.
but were you happy with like how the deck performed aside from that? Like if there wasn't quite as much aggro, do you think you would have been
Yes. I think I mulliganed really well. I ended a lot of games with like a turn one Winota and, and an attacker. I just didn't really have I didn't have the nuts. I didn't have like the defensive pieces in hand. I needed to be able
Sure.
to defend it. So I don't know. With decks like that, I try to present a problem and hope that the table can't deal with it. That's very much my strategy on Kark too. I often am like the way that I play that deck. I'm often casting like Jeska's Will turn 2 into a naked Kark and just hoping.
Right.
That's a common play pattern for me. If I can't develop a whole lot. And then with Winota too, I definitely felt like I set myself up for success. It's just that sometimes they have the answer and they're waiting to use it for you. So, and that happened to me a lot, unfortunately. But I'm a big fan of the deck. I'm definitely keeping it together. I just currently, with the amount of removal that is being used in this sort of mid-rangey meta, I am taking a break from those decks and joining in on the Timna Crom club. I'm a big fan of the Blue Farm currently, so just like I said, mostly because of table psychology more than anything else.
Yeah, makes sense. Morgan, thoughts on how Blue Pod performed during the weekend? I was singing the praises of Blue Pod that entire weekend. Honestly, I still think
I love that.
I still think it was like I think it was a really, really, really good choice for that weekend. Still,
So it was an
from the
interesting
outside.
one because I felt like it was really well positioned against like it was really well positioned against the turbo decks.
Yeah.
I lost to a turbo deck in round 1 where it was Cyrus from Mental Misplay. Two of my opponents opened with Ancient Tomb Talisman, and I looked at my Force of Vigor and I went like, so they could just not have colored mana. That'd be cool. And so I went, yeah, you know what? Screw it. We're gonna pitch. I forget what it was. I pitched something. I just blew up both of their colored sources, and I was like, nice. This will buy me a lot of time. And then Cyrus untaps, goes, cool. Play a black producing land. Cast this mana crypt I just top deck. Play Tevesh. I was like, great, just fantastic. Cool. Yep. And then on turn 3, he went, cool, play another land and cast Ad Nauseam. I was like, yeah, that'll do it. Turns out the Yennet player with blue open just didn't have anything, and we died to Nas. But apart from that, like every other game, I was able to either get some value and have interaction, or play like a Deafening Silence or a Collector Roof. And it definitely felt like I had the tools to like deal with those decks pretty reasonably. I did wind up in a few pods where it was like, oh crap, everyone's on mid range. This is awkward. And I also did run into problems with like, in particular, one of my pods had a Krakashima player who I had an Aethersworn Canonist and a Collector Roof, and he kept removing. I think he bounced the Canonist, played some stuff, bounced the Oof. I replayed it. He bounced the Oof, played some stuff. I replayed it, and then he bounced them both and tried to go for a win, and then passed to another player who then was able to win very easily because there was no stacks. Yeah. In fairness, he made like a really solid attempt at winning and almost got there. But like it was a little unfortunate on that front. But generally, yeah, I was really happy to have the stacks I did have in my deck, and felt like once things started getting stacked out, I was pretty comfortable. Like, I managed to beat a Yisan player by, like, I found I was able to, like, tutor a Mind Sensor and then assemble a win.
Yeah, just, like, you have access things like to all that. The stuff required to deal with those decks.
And even against other mid-range decks, I was relatively happy. I drew a pod against Ian, and there were there was an Evolution, a Dawnwaker, and Blue Pod all in the same pod. And yeah, big shock. The 3 Thras Bruce players took their pod to a draw. Who could have seen this coming?
Crazy. Wild.
But yeah, I was really happy with it. I ran into like a couple more mid-range decks than maybe would have been ideal. I wouldn't have minded, maybe like Deserta. But overall, yeah, I was very happy with how it performed, and it felt like it was good in the matchups that I brought it to be good against.
Yeah, which is like a good sign of like it's at least a nice indication that like you have a good understanding of how to work around the meta, even if like the read might be a bit off, which I don't necessarily think it was. I think you had a pretty good read. Like just a bit more mid-range in terms of variance, probably. Maybe also just the meta in general, but like I think it was just a good call. Yeah. Oh, I guess yeah. I ended up bringing Sacred Deluxe as always, as is typical, I guess.
Wait,
you probably could have guessed if you've been following.
Thrasios Timna to a tournament?
No. I'm pretty open about what I'm bringing to tournaments in terms of like if I'm playing anything else than Thrasios Timna, you probably just won't hear from me at all leading up to a tournament. But if I'm talking about a deck that I'm playing at all leading into a tournament, you pretty much have a great idea of what I'm actually playing. Yeah, Sacred Deluxe felt pretty good. Obviously, I didn't. Oh, I guess I didn't really talk about this a whole lot on the Mind Sculptors recap video, which you should also go check out if you want to hear more about the Oktoberfest stuff. It's a great cast, but yeah, I sort of went into the tournament with like probably less than 10 games of CDH having been played in like the previous 2 months before showing up. And then I basically like just hadn't played CDH at all for like the week leading up to the tournament. Just really bad idea. You really shouldn't do that in like just a tournament for anything for that matter. Should probably like, stay sharp and like actually practice before leading into it. But I didn't. And I was definitely punished for that. There were a couple of games where I think if I had been or like had the practice, had stayed sharp leading into the tournament, I probably could have won them. Which is shitty feeling for myself, but pretty good feeling about the actual deck, because the deck itself I think could have won basically every round that I played except for like one in Swiss. And then I don't think I could have reasonably won the quarters game, but that also sort of more felt like my deck punishing me for throwing away games that were very winnable in the Swiss, rather than the deck underperforming, I think. So yeah, felt decent. For anybody who's keeping up with the development of the deck, I did not miss Yasan at all. The Divining Witch felt very good. And then as well as that, I think we are basically in a pretty good place with the deck right now, and I feel like the only thing left to be solved is the Crom problem, but that's an overarching issue that we're still looking at. Please don't look at the the Paradox server, because there are a lot of bad ideas that we've been throwing around to try to fix that problem, and I'm not confident in any of them, except for like maybe a Script Ranger, but that seems terrible.
That can't be right.
I knew. So I was little thinking about bringing this up on the podcast, and I knew I'd garner some sort of reaction from Morgan. You know what? I'm gonna extract myself, remove myself from the entire just complete negativity of my co-host. Claire, what do you think about Script Ranger and Thrasios Dimna? You know what? I'll take that as an answer.
That's the
it's a card.
1/1
It's
for
very
2
much
that with Pro Blue, right?
Yep.
And flying and
it's
flying.
a Korean Ranger.
It blocks Crom.
Definitely does.
But like,
I mean,
so does a Stone Coil Serpent.
Yeah, but you can't Neoform Eldritch Evolution or Finale for a Stone Coil Serpent.
Okay, but hear me out. Vampire Nighthawk.
I used to love that card in Innistrad Standard. Oh my god.
Or
Zendikar Standard, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get too bogged down in this, but definitely one of the considerations at one point for this slot was Baleful Strix. Just for blocking large commanders and also generating value.
I haven't seen a Baleful Strix in a CDH deck in years, I feel like.
I had it in Timna Ishai for a bit, because that deck was hilarious, but I don't think it was ever actually good enough for the deck. I just, I was playing it because I found a deck that I could play a Baleful Strix in, and so I played a Baleful Strix in it.
I mean, it is a Timna attacker for sure.
100% is a Timna attacker. It attacks through Croms. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean I think that's pretty much all I have to say on the deck right now. I'm still working on it. I just need to play it more. But I think before we like depart wholesale from, because I think we're pretty much good about talking about the actual tournament part of the event. Unless anybody has like specific things they want to touch on aside from that. But before getting out of the competitive mindset completely, I did actually want to ask Claire, because I think we had a brief discussion about this at the tournament, sort of as it was winding down toward the end of the event. But we didn't like talk super in depth about it, and we didn't. I sort of wanted to get it on a podcast or on recording, because I thought it would be pretty interesting.
Sure.
But really just like asking about sort of your experiences with like just getting into tournament CDH more recently, because you're in a really interesting place right now where at least from my perspective, where you're in the midst of sort of like starting to grind tournaments a bit more, try to make it out to the ones that you can, maybe playing some online ones just more often, and sort of like looking at it through the perspective of wanting to like wring percentage points out of the game rather than like necessarily like play like classic CDH of like trying to play the best at a given deck, not necessarily like thinking about tournament results or like tournament metas.
I mean, so I get bored with decks pretty easily, so I end up jumping around a lot. So events being proxy friendly has definitely been helpful in that regard. I am definitely doing that though. Like I am watching the meta. I'm feeling like I am taking experiences from certain decks and trying to get a feel for how the meta reacts to those, because my first two IRL tournament experiences have been on very, like as I've said, commander centric strategies,
right,
that have felt interesting to play into. They definitely require a lot of politicking, which is not a skill that I'm particularly good at the moment. It's something I'm working to improve on. So that's it. It's given me a lot of insight into that specifically, and as far as like being able to argue for certain lines of thought within a game,
right,
or certain lines of play in a game, and how you would necessarily go about doing that. And that's a skill, like I said, I'm trying to develop because of the information that I've been able to garner from that. But yeah, I really am just trying to increase the amount of tournaments that I'm playing and my percentage points in those tournaments. And I've always been really interested in the CDH ecosystem too, not necessarily a single deck, but how decks interact in the kind of the pool of the meta. And
which is like that's really important for like an understanding of the overall meta and like what might influence like deck choices and card choices, right?
Exactly. And there's definitely a bit of a rock paper scissors game when it comes to archetypes. But things can change based on politics, on mulligans, on all kinds of things. You're never really kind of down and out completely. But it's definitely been a good experience. I just kind of dived in with Punt City being my first event, and then with this, and then I've been trying to do more online tournaments too, as you said. Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm used to Comp REL stuff. I've played in modern events and stuff like
which
that.
Is unironically like, or like not trying to what's the word? Anyway, it's a huge boon to be comfortable playing at CRE.
And that is something I noticed specifically at Okotoberfest. Not so much at Punt City. It seemed like the crowd at Punt City was very much experienced with that kind of stuff. People kind of knew what they were doing as far as like playing at a competitive rules enforcement level. But at Okotoberfest, it definitely felt like there were a lot of people there who this was their first Comp REL event. And I definitely made some judge calls that I like felt really guilty about, because I mean that's what you're supposed to do. If someone's committing a rules violation, even if it's not intentional, they didn't notice the stacks piece. You can't just have them take it back. You have to get a judge to contact them and see how you're going to back up the game based off of what the judge wants. So,
I am
definitely
a huge proponent of calling judges aggressively, especially in CDH. CDH gets really, really weird really quickly, or like can turn on a dime into getting into incredibly strange rules, like rules interactions and stuff. And I think people do not call judges like aggressively enough at all. Like I'll call a judge like on average probably once a round over the course of a CDH tournament.
And I don't think that's bad. I mean,
no.
I definitely feel the same. If I see something, if I catch something that is an illegal game action, I'm definitely calling a judge 100% of the time. Just because you want to make sure that like those things get backed up in a fair fashion.
Yeah.
So that has definitely, as you said, it's been a real boon for me as far as these events go. I'm definitely trying to I'm trying to take some advice I received on Twitter from actually both Ian and Rebel about not letting it get to me when I don't perform better than I have previously, which is something I've been trying to focus on with my Mox Masters 2 performance the last weekend. Just because it is, there's a lot of variance in CDH, and it doesn't always go your way, unfortunately. But hopefully we can start increasing those percentage points. And I've got some resources I'm taking advantage of to try and get better at the politics. And I feel like my mulligan's good, my play is good, but there's a lot of specific decisions in these highly complicated board states that I can definitely struggle with. It's why I tend to play turbo decks, is because you tend to cut back on the amount of decision points and interaction points when you're doing everything fast in the first couple turns. But when you're like,
there's also just like less there's less space for this is a weird way to phrase this. I'm not sure there's a better one, Morgan. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about and could probably get it across in a better way, but like disruptive table talk, if that makes sense.
You two are masters of that, to be honest.
but if I guess to explain it, like table talk to stop yourself from dying, or like to stop game actions that are actually detrimental to you from resolving or happening that turn, right? Like there's just less of that when you're playing a turbo deck, because it's like you're sort of, there's like this unspoken social contract with the table where it's like, yeah, I'm trying to kill you. Like, I'm not the table police here. I'm trying to murder you, and I'm just gonna be trying to do that. So like I might try to deflect like attention away from me, but like a lot of the table talk isn't about like, oh, you need to like interact with this person over like this spell, or oh, you can't do that here. You need to hold up mana for this.
I think like when you play a turbo deck, it's a lot. Oh no worries. It's a lot harder to like make the case that you should be kept alive as like a long-term thing. Sometimes you can be like, hey, you can let me resolve like this spell specifically because that person is the bigger threat, but you can't sort of deflect focus away from yourself in the same way by essentially trying to argue that the pod or like the person you're appealing to wants you in the game for the long term.
I definitely feel like that's a strength of these like Thrasios Bruce decks, like Dawnmaker, Blue
100%.
Pod. Like they definitely take advantage of that kind of perception of being able to stick around and be sort of the table police. Like a lot of decks want them around to be able to stop the faster decks. And that is a really real psychological advantage, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's one
why
of the
green might not be dead in CDH, as some people claim.
yeah, I think I honestly think it's like a really it's a really core part of playing those decks at a really high level too, and having like success with them in a really like competitive environment or tournament environment. Of just like even a lot of the time even like stuff like blue farm can play in that way. Where I mean it's less of a core skill I'd say for blue farm, but it's definitely like one that applies there. But I think it's
Yeah, it's
probably a
certainly
core skill
relevant.
for like Thrasios mid range decks a lot of the time, where it's like yeah, like I am like sort of like in a position where I'm liable to kill you on turn 3. Like there's a lot of the time, like maybe not for the Bruce stuff, but like there's Thassa's Oracle and like Consult in my deck. I can do that. I guess for Bruce, it's like yeah, there is like a Dockside and an MEL in this deck. Like I can just kill you if I need to early. But yeah, like you're also sort of in a place where you have like plausible deniability around that fact where it's like yeah I'm not on a quick game plan in this game. I'm gonna table police, so you need to
And
keep me alive and need to like not disrupt me here so that I can like keep you alive.
and it's like once you add black, it's like that plausible deniability goes away.
I wouldn't say like when you add black. Obviously, I think Thrasios Timna actually does lose a bit of that compared to Thrasios Bruce, but I think the actual answer is when you have Grixis in the color identity.
Yeah.
It's plausible deniability. Like it then becomes like okay, yeah, sure, but also you're like a breach non-historical deck with rituals and stuff. Like you can kill us out of nowhere here, so like there's less like inherent trust where it feels a lot of the time in like Thrasios Timna, Thrasios Bruce, like there's a bit more inherent trust because like more like the moving pieces in the strategy of the deck are more visible, like they happen on the board rather than in hand. So like you can sort of like build trust with the table through that.
Yeah, and that's definitely a case for like green over red, as if you're playing as like a if you're more of a social player and you're able to kind of like get in people's heads and shift table perception. I'm not good at that. That's why I tend to like Grixis, because Grixis is very much like it doesn't matter what I say.
Yeah,
If I have
I'm the
it and I can
problem.
defend it, I'm gonna win. So
I'm the problem. You have to deal with me. You don't deal with me,
exactly.
cool, you die. Clap clap. Next game. Yeah. But yeah, like I just thought it was interesting to sort of talk about sort of your experiences getting into it more. And like obviously I think like both me and Morgan and a lot of other people are happy to watch you attend more events, play more stuff online, see how you do, because it's interesting to like watch people that you know like and are in good relations with just like like invest themselves a bit more in the game and like try to pick more of it up, right? Because there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of depth, and I'm at the point where I have functional understanding of the moving pieces, but I'm not quite there as far as manipulating perception at the table. And I remember Ian mentioned to me, I was talking about my frustrations with like politic, and he's like, "Well, it is a social game."
Yeah.
And that was very much like epiphany moment that like this is a skill that I really need to be able to develop in order to find success when I don't have just the most proactive thing going on at a table.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So did want to get into a couple of the other highlights of the weekend because there was an event happening around the tournament as well. Obviously, a bunch of people showed up, a bunch of friends of ours and friends of everybody showed up and got to hang out, and it was a great time all around. So I just wanted to sort of talk about some of those moments too. I know personally, I had a great time playing a deck that I revived from the ashes from like 2 to 3 years ago at the event and have been playing ever since, which is Malcolm Timna, which I absolutely love. I don't love the way, or sorry, I don't love the commander's Malcolm Timna. I love the deck that I built around Malcolm Timna. It's just sort of like a blue-white flyers, like asymmetrical hate list. And it has been an absolute blast. You just play like a bunch of torpor orbs because there are 3 flying torpor orbs for some reason now, which is nutty and is great, and makes for some really fun game states for you and not for the rest of the table. So.
I'm remembering that game we played outside of rounds, where I'm playing Morgan's Holland deck, and there is both a Hushbringer and an Intruder Alarm in play, so nothing untaps.
And a Grafdigger's Cage, as well as a Notion Thief and a Linvala, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a headache of a board state for sure.
So yeah, I had an absolute blast playing that deck over the weekend, and have been having a ton of fun playing it ever since. Do y'all have any just fun moments from hanging out with people over the weekend that you want to get on podcast?
Oh, I really loved Alan's Cube. Alan from Mental Misplay. That cube was a ton of fun to play. I ended up playing I got what is it? The I got 2 of the conspiracy that doubles a spell in your deck.
Yep.
And so I drafted 3 dark rituals and 3 lightning bolts, and just had a bunch of brain geysers, and I was trying to draw a bunch of cards. And then I had, I think it's like a 4-mana sorcery that deals damage equal to the amount of cards in your hand, and that whole idea of the deck was trying to get a bunch of cards in hand and then cast that and kill a player. I didn't end up pulling it off, but it was a ton of fun playing that cube. And I know, Reed, that your deck was kind of insane.
I would, if by insane you mean constructed by a mad scientist, then yes. Yeah, so just for context for anybody listening, Alan from Mental Misplay, first of all, fantastic dude. Go subscribe to him if you haven't already. Did coverage of the finals for the event, actually, for Okotoberfest, which was really well done, in my opinion. I think Alan's the perfect person to be doing that stuff. But he has a multiplayer cube with just a bunch of stuff from Conspiracy, but also classic Eternal staples and some dreams that you can live, and it is just the best time. You can draft conspiracies in it. There's some draft matters cards as well, again from conspiracy sets. Just super cool stuff. I ended up building
the special pack that have Gristlebrand.
Yeah. Well, because there was what card is it? It brings in a pack from outside the draft into
Lore
the draft
Seeker,
as
I
well.
want to say is the
I think it's Lore Seeker. Just tons of fun. I ended up putting together the first 3 cards in my draft were Valadar Guardian, it was Sahili, the conspiracy that whenever you the conspiracy that when you start the game you draw 2 hands of 7 and then pick one as your hand that you start with mulligans, and then Sahili Rai, and I was just okay, yeah, we're just doing this. This is the deck that I'm building, and it ended up being an absolute monstrosity with 3, I forgot what it is. It's the conspiracy that you name 2 creatures secretly, and then whenever you cast one of them, you go and search for the other one out of your deck and put it in your hand. So I got 3 of those plus a Lutri, and then I also had Valadar Guardian, Jeru, and then the new Meld Urza plus the Mightstone and the Meekstone, and all 3 of the conspiracy named Lutri plus one of the other combo pieces. So the idea of the deck was to put Lutri in your hand, cast Lutri, and then tutor Valadar Guardian, Jeru, and Urza all at once. Which is just a great time. I also had the double given sorcery conspiracy, which I named Bribery with, and ended up double briberying in a game to get Razaketh and Hullbreaker War.
Yes,
also,
yeah.
Great time.
Yeah, because Liliana.
You almost managed to lose that game too. That was very impressive.
Almost lost that game. I was it took a lot to actually get to that point because I had milled over the bribery earlier in the game. Or no, sorry. I think Lily had discarded it from my hand, actually. I think I'd been Thoughtseize or something.
Yeah, Liliana at Defiant Necro on Twitter was very on brand with her picks.
Oh, just, mono black. Had drafted both Grizzlebrand and Razaketh as well as just being mono black aggro. Just,
there was
the most on brand deck.
What is it, the Massacre Worm and stuff like that. It was kind of an insane pile of black cards.
took those, and it like that turn took a lot to get through because I had lost. So I had lost the bribery from a discard spell, and had played my Mystic Sanctuary earlier in the game without it being online, and that was my only recursion left. So it took it took activating like a loot to find an island off the top, to play the island, cast Felidar Guardian, Felidar blink the Mystic Sanctuary to put the bribery back on top into another impulse draw to draw it, and then cast it again. It was just like dumb turn. And then Morgan had also a dumb deck.
I was drafting like a just an absolutely miserable blue-white control deck. And then got past a World Knit like halfway through pack 3 and just sort of went, yeah, fuck it, we're doing this. It was hilarious because it turned out that Reed and I were like very much fighting over the same cards. But
yeah, I was like drafting like blue-white blink as the base for my deck, and Morgan was drafting blue-white control.
It was a 9-player draft, and so there were, on one side of the table there were 3 people between us, and on the other side of the table there were 4 people between us. So we just like, at that point any signal is just gone, right? Like, there's if it was like, oh, when I'm like receiving cards from Reed, there's no blue. But it's like, oh, there's a person completely on the opposite side of the table in the same archetype as me. How am I ever supposed to figure this out?
I had an indication that I wasn't seeing all the blink cards that I should be, and there was probably somebody contesting me, but like, by the time that I picked up fully on it, it was like halfway through pack 2, or like near the end of pack 2, and I was just like, whatever, I'm too committed. We'll just keep drafting. But yeah, World Knit deck, disgusting.
Yeah, it was a spicy one. We found a Lake of the Dead, and we got to use that to cast a Consecrated Sphinx on like turn 4, and then just followed up with like, I Reflector Maged like 2 or 3 times and had Hostage Taker, and then wiped the board, and then wiped the board again, and then basically the game didn't exactly end. I killed one of my opponents, who was Alana, who was playing. She had ISO Rev, but like her only real source of mana was a Metalworker.
Yeah.
So she had to
the entire draft just trying to live the Metalworker dream.
So like, I mean, she passed the turn with Isochron Scepter, Dramatic Reversal, Metalworker, and Sensei's Top in play. So we were almost dead. But I managed to land my austere command naming artifacts, and she was not very happy with me, which, justifiably so. I am the worst. But
is that when she called you a terrorist?
She called me a terrorist on many occasions during that game. Let's be very clear about that. But yeah, it was a wild one. And I ended that game with like a fully melded Brazilla and a Kogla in play. Just, because sometimes World Knit is like kind of not okay. I feel like because Conspiracy was like such a memey set, that got overlooked, but like,
yeah,
I honestly think that like, if World Knit was in like the vintage cube on MTGO, I think I would pick it like over Black Lotus every time.
Yeah, I mean, especially World Knit in a cube that's designed to be relatively high power, and like is powered and has like a bunch of like really, really dumb value creatures plus like hyper synergy stuff. It's just like, yeah, I can take this World Knit and I'm like never gonna see a bad card this entire draft.
Yeah, like literally just draft the best card out of every pack. Or just draft a land because you don't care because it taps for any color, and that way your deck doesn't have to be massive.
I'm really glad you got to live the Brazilla dream, though. That's amazing.
That is pretty cool.
I feel like it's the Brazilla nightmare, though. Like just it's very fitting with the cards and the lore that is not a dream; it's a nightmare.
It is definitely a nightmare. You are correct.
I need to get back around to playing Divergent Transformations to try to make Brazella. I that was in a deck at one point. And I still
No,
have yet to
stop.
ever melt them in a
Bad.
game of CDH, but it's so close. But
Bad
it's so
read.
close.
Down.
It's a Divergent
boy.
pile that quote unquote wins through all stacks. It's great.
Sit. I need a
You should
spray
still
bottle.
build it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Honestly, I'm of a mind to immediately after this podcast. So if anybody sees that pop up on my Mox field, don't be confused. Just remember about this podcast episode. Yeah. Oh man. So Alan's Cube was a great time. We got some good games in after the tournament, as we said. I know at least for me, and I know for Morgan, Claire, I'm assuming you probably had some amount of this experience as well, but we had a bunch of people come up that weekend and say hi, and say that they're either fans of the podcast or just knew us from being online in the CDH sphere, at least me and Morgan being terminally online for CTH, and just come up and say hi and had a bunch of really cool conversations and stuff. So I was really happy to see that. It's still completely surreal to me that like more than 2 people listen to our podcast every week that aren't Zach. So great to hear from y'all. And again, highly encourage people to, if you're in the area for one of these tournaments, to come out and hang out, or if you're going to them anyway, then just come up and say hi. And I'm more than happy to sit down, have a talk, maybe play some games, just jam.
But Reed, do you sign
But
cards?
you two are wonderful. I mean, like, I know that my mentor with ZDH, Alex, the Manoweb, talks very highly of both of you. So
I appreciate that even after Morgan stopped writing articles for him wholesale, and I promised that I would write articles for him, and it just didn't. I appreciate that we're still on good terms.
Look, it's just that
Morgan,
writing is so much
Yep.
effort. I just
Yeah, sorry. I did just sort of drive by you with that one before
Yeah,
we
a little
got back to your train of thought.
Oh, no worries.
Morgan, you were saying something. Just
no, I was just joking. I asked if you sign cards.
oh
You
yes,
have a
yeah.
Bit of a story there.
This that weekend I did in fact sign God, my second survival of the fittest, which is so cursed. Yeah, I ended up having to sign. Oh no, sorry, I'm terrible with names. I'm
Wow.
gonna go look back and I'm gonna go put your name in the description because you were such a great person and we played a game in the stream room together. He was on Shuffle Atla Polani, fantastic game. He ended up taking it down in I think round 4 of the Swiss. And the on stream was really awesome. Came up after we meant to play games, didn't end up getting around to it, and I ended up signing the Survival of the Fittest, which was awesome. And sorry, I'm terrible with names. It's skipping me in the moment. I'll give you full thanks in the description for this episode. I'm actually writing this into the show notes right now because I really appreciate it. We had some great interactions. We talked after after that round, after a couple of rounds, and it was a really good time. So thank you. I sort of ruined this completely, but yeah. Anyway, the fun story is that I've now signed 2 Survival of the Fittest, like real Survival of the Fittest, and I don't know why people keep asking me to. It's like actually physically painful every time I do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure your response was like, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. But
Yep.
like, it's like, I don't think
But
you should want
why?
this.
Yeah. I think that's about all I had in terms of talking about the event directly. Y'all have anything else that you want to talk about in pertaining to Okotoberfest?
Not that I can think of. I think we've really discussed the meat of it. But it was
great.
definitely wonderful to see a lot of people I saw at Punt City and meet some new people as well that I knew online. And it was really just a wonderful weekend for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So with that, I think we'll move off of our main topic and into everybody's favorite part of the show. So I'm laughing because I know it's coming next, and I'm not sure if we actually have a segment here. But time for everybody's favorite segment. Gut check.
Gut check.
Yeah. Claire, do you want to give us a gut check? Any style that you want, whatever your personal style is.
What do you mean exactly? Can you give me an
Just
example?
say the words gut
Yeah,
check in
Gut check.
some recognizably
Oh,
different
gotcha.
way from your normal speaking voice.
Gut check.
There we go.
You know what?
Nice.
That's actually super appreciated. That's a very clear gut check, and I think that was actually that's actually probably a niche that we've been missing for the entirety of the runtime of this podcast. I'm not gonna lie. Morgan.
All right, let's
maybe had a gut check before we started the show, and then we run into it, and hopefully we have one now. So do we?
Yeah. I guess my gut check is what is the one card in the main board of your deck that it just wouldn't be the same without? That's the best way to phrase it. Of the deck you took to Okotoberfest.
To Oktoberfest. I mean, I have my answer.
Oh yeah, I've got mine too.
All right, Reed, you want to lead us off?
Cool. Sure, Sacred Guide.
I mean,
unfortunately, not a particularly difficult choice. I mean, if you mean like not at all the same strategy,
I guess I would say it shouldn't just be like directly the win con, like.
Oh sure, I mean,
what's the card that you're like, oh yeah, this is like. You look at it, you're like, oh yeah, it's all coming together.
So that one is that's probably Seedborn Muse in that deck because I don't think that deck is anywhere close to the same thing without specifically a Seedborn Muse in it. So I'll lock that one in.
I wish we knew everyone's lifetime Thrasios activation count. How much of a lead Reed has.
I definitely cracked top 2, and I'm not sure that it's particularly close below that. I'm not sure who's above me, but I'm just leaving.
Assuming you don't count infinite.
Yeah. Claire?
All right, Claire.
Mine is okay. First off, I've never seen the Walking Dead show, but mine is definitely Rick Steadfast Leader. I love that card.
That card is kind of not okay.
It's really not.
Honestly.
It's really good. And it's gotten me out of so many awkward board states with First Strike Lifelink. And then the Anthem. Oh, it's just it is my favorite card to cast in Winota. It's a great card to see off the top, but I love just casting it into a board state too. That's really kind of gummed up. Especially if the game is kind of focused around combat. And yeah, it's just a joy to see. I always feel very powerful when I've got Rick in play, so big fan of that card for sure.
Honestly, I feel like what's crazy about Rick is that it would be entirely reasonable and totally playable if the Anthem and ability granting effect didn't apply to itself.
Yeah.
But it does.
But it does for reasons.
The fact that it makes itself a 5/6 for reasons is just so dumb.
Yeah, 4 mana 5/6 with lifelink and first strike. Chef's kiss, really.
Yeah, that's also just an Anthem.
Yeah.
Also, it's a little wild to me that you said first strike when I feel like it's supposed to be vigilance because all your stuff is just way too big to beat in combat anyways.
So I pick vigilance a lot, but the game where he was relevant, I was playing against Jetmir, as I mentioned before, so there were a lot of 4 toughness creatures on the battlefield with 5 power, and I needed to not get hit on, and they also had first strike because of the Jetmir, so
right.
I needed to
be able to trade at least.
Yeah, and so that made first strike an easy choice. I like it, first strike as a choice a lot of the time. Vigilance is definitely more often correct, especially with most CDH board states, with creatures being somewhat small, on the most part. But yeah, no, I have a special kind of joy when I can do lifelink First Strike though, because I know it's supposed to be vigilance a lot of the time, but when I get to pick First Strike when it feels like the right answer, I feel kind of invincible with that card out. So
Honestly, reasonable.
All right.
Uh,
Mine, man, it's like, it's such a tough call. I feel like, I'm not going to say survival because I've spoken enough about survival on this podcast.
You have a couple of signature cards in that deck.
So I think I'm going to say Biomancer's Familiar.
Yeah, wow. That's actually a crazy one.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just, it obviously, like, works really well with Thrasios. It's super accessible because it's creature tutorable. And, it makes Emil, there was a game where I didn't quite find the time to get it online, but, like, I had a few opportunities to set up. Biomancer's Familiar Emil is just, like, your board can't be removed, ever.
Yeah.
It's just, like, 1 mana counter-target removal spell on your board. Just kind of messed up. And then I did get to, as I said earlier on stream, do the disgusting Yisan line of end step, get Quirion Ranger, untap, get the Biomancer's Familiar, and then green get an untapper, green get an untapper, green get Kiki. So I just, it was end step Yisan on 0, disgusting. Untap, you're dead. And it just, like, it fits with Thrasios, Yisan, and Emil, which are, like, all sort of the main engines of the deck in a lot of ways, other than, obviously, like, the specific Pod Vannifar combo line. They're, like, the pieces that fit in around it, and it just works super well with all of them, and is a creature, which means you can tutor it very, very easily.
Hey, it's a green creature. That means that moves it up, like, literal multiple tiers in your mental tier list, I'm assuming.
I actually
green creatures all the way to the top.
I don't like Green Suns as a card, really. Like, it's a card that I, like, generally want to cut, so the fact that it's green, meh.
Well, I just meant in general, not really in like pertaining to Green Suns either. Just like green creature in general equals.
I mean, sorry, like, it makes it better
there.
in that, like, it's very tutorable because you get green creature tutors, but even if it was, like, blue-red, it would still be more or less just as good in
Oh, sure. I was just bringing to light how we're both addicts to green decks, and that, like,
a little bit,
creature being green just means that it's automatically better. Like, man,
for
dude,
sure.
Dockside was red-green. Oh boy, get that into my veins. Cool. So that's gut check. And then we do have a bit more time in the episode. So I think we're going to do a quick listener question as well. This one, I picked this one and then sort of realized that it's, like, almost completely exclusionary to Claire's experience, unfortunately. But we'll try to get through it relatively quickly. So this listener question comes from Espen on the Discord. Again, reminder that both for the gut check and for the listener question, we have channels on our Discord where you can submit listener questions for us to answer on the episode, as well as patrons can submit gut check ideas, and you can all go vote on the previous gut checks for all previous episodes on the Discord. So you should go do that because it's a fun thing to do, and also engagement, and also, you know, you get to hang out in the Discord, talk to us if you ever would want to do that for some reason. Anyway, from Espen. Espen asks, how do you evaluate 3 to 4 mana value engines in Thrasios decks? Examples being something like Archmage Emeritus or Teferi Time, Master of Time, versus, like, slotting in stuff like additional interaction over those. It's actually sort of an interesting question in terms of, like, how much are you willing to, like, how many Thrasios activations are you willing to sacrifice to, like, cast fat things instead?
I feel like it doesn't. It honestly doesn't just apply. Like, if the meta continues down this mid-range trend, I don't think this is a question that just applies to Thrasios decks. Like, no, I think this is a question that Tymna Crom players might also start asking themselves. Like,
yeah, I mean,
hey, how does something like a Teferi Master of Time sound?
Yeah, Teferi Master of Time is, like, not a stranger to TNK decks, especially, like, TNK Nas Breach decks. So I'd be interested to see if it makes its way back into a lot of those builds in a bit down the line, maybe a couple of tournaments, a few months down the line. Maybe we'll see some Teferi Master times at Silicon Dynasty. Although, maybe not. I feel like Teferi Master times sort of had, like, its time in the sun for, like, half a year, like, last year-ish. And it's sort of just been, like, falling off a bit in 4-color decks since then, but you never know.
I feel like people, when it came out, they were like, looting's not that good. I don't really need to, like, kill it. I can just, go face or, like, whatever. And then a few times they either had their thing phased out or got, the person actually got to take the extra turns. And then people went, okay, yeah, I guess we should kill this. And now it just kind of gets crunched.
Yeah.
But it is like
you end up accruing a ridiculous amount of card selection, though, too.
You definitely do. Like, the persistent card selection of that card feels like the real power. Like, the phasing out is, like, nice to have as a second option. And does get used a bunch, but my god, the filtering on that card gets out of control very quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
and then if
I
you've got any sort of graveyard interaction or graveyard synergies,
like, feeling breach is, like, definitely a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a place for these cards. One that a few people I play with have actually been toying with in their 99s and 98s is Rafine, which I think, unfortunately, if Rafine wasn't white, I think it might actually be the solution to the Crom problem that the Sacred Guide players are looking for. But unfortunately, you can't play it with Sacred Guide. But yeah, there is definitely a sense in which, like, activating Thrasios is maybe not like quite good enough on its own anymore. Which I think is why, like, we've both evolved towards, I think now we're both running Training Grounds and Biomancer's Familiar, and that's like that has increased over time from, I think we started with like 1 out of 4, or was there a time when actually neither of us were on either card? I'm not sure. Anyways,
maybe not this year, but probably, like, at some point in the recent past.
And so, like, I certainly see the idea behind, like, hey, if 4 mana scry 1 draw a card isn't good enough, like, maybe 4 mana, over the next 3 turns draw like 5 or 6 cards is good enough. But I think it really does, particularly when you're talking about 3 and 4 mana engines, it really does get in the way of things, and, like, tapping that mana down at sorcery speed is super awkward. I still have a soft spot in my heart for Smothering Tithe, precisely because it's like, yes, you tap out to cast it, but, like, you still have the mana to interact.
Yeah, there's actually, like, I think that I would actually even potentially call that the primary axis on which I might evaluate 3 and 4 mana engines, and, like, Thrasios decks specifically, like, especially decks that are looking to leverage Thrasios to relatively high degrees compared to, like, if you're playing, like, I don't know, like Thras, Javesh, like Turbo or something like that. Is that, like, the ability to hold up a Thrasios activation for a turn cycle while also representing, like, some amount of interaction is, like, so important in a lot of those slots that, like, or in a lot of those spots that, like, tapping out instead for a value engine, which, I mean, Teferi does interact with the board, but doesn't necessarily interact on the stack. And a lot of these value engines aren't going to interact really necessarily at all with win attempts or power plays. It, like, sort of puts you in a really uncomfortable place a lot of the time, to the point where, like, realistically, if you have enough mana that you can both slam one of these and hold up reasonable amounts of interaction, like, potentially the answer is just that you should be running, like, maybe just more tutors for Seaborn Muse instead.
Yeah, I also feel like some of the strength of the way we tend to play these mid-rangey decks is, like, you never actually want to cast a spell that's good enough to counter until it's too late.
Yeah.
Right? Like, obviously the exception there is, like, exactly Seedborn Muse, but
just because it's, like, it's so difficult to counter.
Yeah, but, like, you never want, like, even a card like Rhystic Study, which, like, we've discussed as, oh, if you don't think you can win, like, just tutor Rhystic Study. There are times where it's like, I'm not gonna tutor Rhystic Study, like, that's not resolving. I'm gonna go for, like, Biomancer's Familiar or whatever, because I think that's like, that's, like, the most threatening thing I can cast without, like, actually having people do something about it. And I think when you start putting in, like, maybe Fabro Elder is like the top end of that, but I think when you get higher than that, it becomes a problem pretty quickly as people start to interact with you, and then it's like double bad because you're tapping out of your own interaction and drawing someone else's interaction, and it just creates super spoopy windows. But I don't know, maybe they'll print some stuff with Flash that, like, actually, you know, I could see, like, slotting in like some 3 mana. I mean, like, to an extent, you know, stuff sort of like Archivist of Ogma, but at 3.
I was actually about to say, like, a mega Archivist of Ogma wouldn't be something that I'd be opposed to running in a lot of Thrasios decks, even if it was like 3 or 4 mana. Like, obviously better than Archivist, but, like, you know, in that space. Cool. I hope we have satisfactorily answered in a satisfactory manner your question, Espen. Thanks for the question. Yeah. I think that should about wrap it up for this episode of the Ancient North podcast. Before we close it out, I would like to turn the floor over to Claire to go promote yourself and let the people out there know what you're doing, where they can find you, where they should go check out.
Yeah, so as I mentioned up top, I'm a member of the Who Brewed This content creation team. We currently stream, and we haven't released a video in a little while on YouTube, but you can find us at just search Who Brewed This on YouTube for some pre-recorded CDH content. We've also been uploading our VODs from our stream there. We stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Who Brewed This as well. And you can find us there typically Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or so. We typically stream for like 2 or 3 hours. And I know Scoots is good for some funny jokes too, so it can be pretty entertaining.
Oh yeah, it's a great crew.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I love Pedro too. Frustrating to play against sometimes because he loves his Rule of Law decks and he loves his Stony Silence, but no, he's an excellent player and a great friend for sure. You can find me on Twitter at Anxiety Elemental. It's at ANXI, the number 8, IELEMENTAL. And I mostly piss off legacy players, I guess.
Oh god.
We almost went the entire episode. But you know what? You know what? I appreciate the little pin in the episode right at the end there. So yep, thanks Claire so much for coming on. It's much appreciated. Honestly, anytime. And yeah, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at Into the North Pod, via our email, intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for the episode. An extra special thanks goes towards all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work toward improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we're at patreon.com/intothenorthpodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. Anytime you would want to purchase something from TCG Player, use our affiliate link, which is in the description for this episode. A portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. Thank you, as always, to the band Fox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, and to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Till then, see ya.